Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the Guitar Underground. I'm your host, Neil Santos, creator of the Pentatonic Way, friend of guitar players everywhere. And today we're going to talk about something that's kind of interesting. Might have you stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit. And that is improvising over different genres. Genres that may not be in your wheelhouse, so to speak. Maybe you're a rock guy that feels uncomfortable jamming over reggae or blues, or maybe you're a blues player that is uncomfortable playing in any other genre like country or whatever, So today we're going to be breaking down those walls. We're going to be exploring all different types of genres and try to broaden your horizons and all of our horizons as guitar players. So, let me see. I kind of think about genres and music. In a lot of ways, I think of music as language, right? And genres would just be different accents, right? Like the words are, for the most part, the same, but then you just kind of flavor them a little bit. So, So let us think about it as that. Different languages. We're going to look at, or different accents, sorry. 5 different reasons that playing over genres can be difficult, or, maybe not as difficult as you may think. And then 5 actionable tips to help you start breaking down these barriers in your own playing, in your own practice sessions, all right? So let's check it out. What are we going to learn today? Understand what actually changes between genres. We're going to learn how to adapt phrasing instead of memorizing endless theory. We're going to use one familiar framework to sound more musical everywhere. And we're going to build your confidence improvising over tracks that use to intimidate you. All right? If you're trying to become more confident improviser without drowning in complexity, make sure to subscribe to the Guitar Underground. Every episode is about making the fretboard feel simpler, clearer, and more musical. All right? So let's get into it. Point 1. Reason 1. Factoid 1. The notes matter less than the delivery. All right? So I think different genres share more overlap than a lot of players realize. The pentatonic scale, my favorite scale, works across blues, rock, country, soul, funk, pop, and more. It's like the scale is the same, but what is different is like the phrasing, the rhythm, the articulation, and the space you leave in between phrases. All right. It makes me think of when I graduated Berklee back in 2001, so long ago, 25 years ago, man. Anyway, I digress. Who was getting their doctorate there, like the honorary doctorate, and they spoke at the ceremony was Steely Dan, right? So Walter Becker, Donald Fagen, they talked and stuff. Mostly Walter talked. And what I remember him saying is, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but when in doubt, play the blues because it works over everything, And that kind of sums up today's episode. Like you can play the same licks over most things, which is really cool. I mean, some genres have their specific sort of quirks, right? Some have a specific scales that work over them. Like I would think metal, is more like harmonic minor sometimes. It can be. If it's that certain type of metal, depends on what chords there are. So, but for the most part, blues works over everything. And that's kind of what he was getting at there. He said that that's what he did. So if it works for Walter Becker, Steely Dan, recognized as one of the greatest bands in the history of bands, then, it's probably good enough for us too, So yeah, let's see. And if it does sound wrong when you play a blues lick, it's not that the blues lick was wrong or the notes, it's the accent. The accent that you're using may not be accurate. All right, let's go into number 2. Point number 2, rhythm is the shortcut to genre awareness. So, and this makes the most sense to me. Like this is really where it lies. It's not so much about the notes. They're all the same notes. It's about the rhythm and the delivery. Like funk is more about syncopation and groove, like getting that groove going, hearing the drums and locking in with the drums. Blues is more laid back. Like you lay behind the note. I remember Billy Gibbons quote. He was talking about, if you want to sound really funky, just play a little bit slower, a little bit behind the beat, And I started messing around with that, and I really liked the feel of that, like the concept of that. So that's what you do in blues. Country is almost on the other side. You're almost rushing. You're pushing the beat, and you're targeting chord tones, So that has a note-specific one, too, where you're really following the chords. As opposed to like sometimes blues or funk, you're just kind of floating. You're just playing one sort of scale or one group of notes over the entire thing. Or soul phrasing is more about like a vocal style phrasing with adding breathing room and, being more, sexy solos, if there is such a thing, which I'm sure there is. Yeah, so it's about the rhythm more than anything else. So let's see. Number 3, every genre has a conversation style. All right, going back to the idea of playing as a rhythm, as a language or communication between people, you and the listener. So some genres want short, punchy phrases, Some want repetition. I'm thinking of like the blues and stuff. Even there's repetition in the lyrics. They say the same thing 3 times and then they say the punchline, whatever you want to call it, on the 4th time. Some reward tension and release. I'm thinking jazz, where there's so much tension over things like alto dominant chords. And they really lean into it, might only play all the tensions and no chord tones, and then, boom, they fall into the one chord, and they're adding tension and release over every chord. There might be 4 chords in a bar, and each one's leading to a resolution, and then 2-5 resolution, 2-5-1 resolution, 2-5, and through the whole thing, pretty wild. And then some need restraint. Talking about the soul tunes, right? Where you're holding back, or maybe like a ballad, any sort of ballad, no matter what the genre is kind of required that you restrain yourself, man. Hold yourself back. Don't indulge in your deepest noodling tendencies. All right, you don't want to be playing over a soul progression and just shredding out like the entire time. I mean, that might have its place at the end of the solo or something to really lift it up and push it back into the last choruses or whatever. But the whole time, I think you will probably get fired from that gig. Cool. Let me see. Point number 4. You don't need more shapes or scales. You need more ways to use them, right? You just have to reimagine what you already know. Unless it's those like jazz things where you need the alto dominant, the melodic minor scale, or the, like, what was I going to say? More of like the harmonic minor stuff for metal, then you would need it. If your riff is like, you're going to need there's no way around it. Like you play blues over that, it'll sound all right, but you're not going to be able to convince anybody that you know what you're doing, that you belong in that room. So for that, if the riff is based on harmonic minor, you need harmonic minor. If they're offering up jazz chords, alto dominant, you need a jazz scale. But for the other 90% of the music you can play, pentatonics are the way to go. That's my humble opinion. And it's gotten me by, in a very convincing and rewarding way. I was never, I was always thought to belong in that room. Like, oh, all right, good. I'm glad he's here. Not like, oh man, what is this guy doing? Anyway, so you don't need a whole bunch of scales. You just need to take what you know and just use it in a different way by rhythm, by phrasing, stuff like that. Cool. Point number 5, great players blend genres naturally, right? Like they borrow like the superpower from each of the genres, and then they mix it up into their playing. And that's such a huge thing these days. I mean, maybe back in the day, when rock was just coming out and funk and all that stuff, when it was just on the, just taking its first steps, then it was different. Everything kind of was siloed. You didn't play like jazz licks over country, or, when you play blues, you play blues. You know what I mean? You don't play a rock lick. You don't play a shreddy lick. Now it's just all different. I mean, like once jazz stopped, as far as I understand it, once the market for that kind of dried up, all those guys went to country and they started introducing their jazz licks into country, which changed the whole thing. You know what I mean? Or like blues players then went into like the 80s and got into that neoclassical, and then they started mixing that, and then they had this cool thing that gives you like Joe Satriani or Steve Vai, you know what I mean? Where it's like, for the main part of it, it's Billy Gibbons sort of bass licks, and then you throw in some Eddie Van Halen, you throw in some, some flashy stuff, then you got rock guitar now. And then when that went away, like that well dried up of people wanting to listen to hairband music and stuff, all those guys went to country. Like everybody goes to country after, and they still keep the sort of that sort of stuff. But they incorporate all this other stuff into it. And that's what great players do. They listen to everything, they assimilate it, and then they reinterpret it. That's your job as an artist, whether you're a playwright or a visual artist or a dancer, is to take all these things from different genres and then just infuse them into your own style and make something unique to you, So whether that's you're taking like the phrasing from blues songs or those country bends, or like the timing from jazz, like the feel, or like vocal melodies or rock energy, right? Or the funk rhythm falling in that pocket. That's what you want to do. And you can do it within like, the same measure. Do a country lick into like with rock energy, and then jump out of that and really lock into the rhythm, so funky, do some country bends, whatever. It's up to you. But that's the idea, is you don't want to feel like I'm just a blues player or I'm just a rock player. I don't do that. Why limit yourself? You know what I mean? The only one limiting yourself is you, right? So if you like the sound of something, it's fair game. You can use it, So start working that into your soloing. So those are 5 reasons or 5 points about playing and improvising in different genres. Next, we're going to get into 5 actionable tips you can use today to start incorporating this sort of genre bending, qualities into your practice and your playing. So, but by the way, if you listen to this and realize you're not exactly sure why your playing feels stuck, I put together a real quick Pentatonic Way personality quiz. It takes just a couple minutes and helps identify the specific habits and roadblocks that's holding your improvisation back. Some players struggle with fretboard confusion, some with phrasing, some with confidence. some with overthinking things. That was my problem. And the quiz helps narrow that down. So afterward, you'll get a free 3-lesson email course designed around the type of player you are and what you most need to work on. So it's very specific to how the quiz turns out for you. You can check it out at pentatonicway.com/personality. It's simple, free, and honestly, it's been really helpful for a lot of players that were trying to get unstuck. So, all right, back to the episode. Let's look at 5 actionable tips that you can do today to start incorporating this genre-bending sort of approach to your practice. All right? So I got some backing tracks here, and let's see what we can do. So number 1 is play the same backing track in 3 different personalities. All right? So I got a vintage funk jam here. Let's give it a shot.
All right, so it's D minor, F, and then G minor, F, G minor. All right, so that's what we got: D minor, F, and then G minor, F. So let's try. I'll try to play funky. I'll play like maybe blues, a slow blues or so. I don't know if that was bluesy. Well, let me try to do some country style. Something like that, I guess. All right, how about soul? How about the soul player play? They leave a lot of space, right? Like soul soup. Yeah.
So, what I realize is that it's hard to play different styles over funk. So let me just try another one real quick. I got a whole bunch on tap here. All right, now you shrink. Here's an indie rock ballad. All right, this might work up. We do like Toulouse here. Try. Jesus. I'd try country. Nah, try a little pedal dancing. You know, I'm not the best country player in the world for sure. But I, try to throw some of it in there. I like those pedal steel and this kind of those sort of things. So that's the idea. Try to take one backing track and see if you can, I don't know, jam different styles on it. It seems simple enough in theory. So in context, it takes a little practice, but I mean, that's what practice is about. You know what I mean? It's about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And then when you're jamming with someone, maybe that stuff will come out and they'll be like, wow, that's really unexpected. All right, cool. So tip number 2, try limiting yourself to 3 notes, right? So then you're just focusing on rhythm and bends and vibrato and dynamics, all right? But try the same trap. I'm just gonna stay in C minor pentatonic. So I'll try those 3 notes.
Want to add another note on that?
Is that cheating when I bend up? That's just literally adding other notes. But that's an idea. There's something you can mess around with, right? All right. Number 3, copy vocalists, not guitarists. All right. So when you're listening to songs, don't just listen to the guitar. That was me back in the day when I was a teenager. I would just only listen to guitar. And it wasn't until later in life when I had to figure out oh, what does a drum part sound like? How do you write a vocal line? Whatever. I had to go back and start paying attention to that stuff. What is a drum fill? What is, how do people riff at the end of the song when they sing, right? So all these different details for each instrument family. So yeah, listening to phrases and pauses and emotional contour, the energy that they project when they're singing the words, that's going to be a big deal. So let me see if I can find a track and I will attempt to play lyrically. All right, here's a lo-fi jazz jam. All right. So I'll try to play lyrically over this. Here we go.
I always look at, you want to look at me?
All right. I mean, that last part wasn't very vocal. Sorry, no one wants to see me like staring off into space going like, what am I going to play next? Sorry. If you see me start to play and I don't flip the screen down, just yell out and I'll hear you and I'll adjust. All right. Cool. So you can't do that. You're watching this later, future friends. All right. So the idea, I think, being vocal and lyrical sometimes is leaving space. But I think what I notice from a lot of lyrics, especially, and I mean melodies and stuff, especially modern melodies, it's a lot of repeated notes. They're not doing as much as you think, you know? Like, it's not like the old days of someday my prince will come or somewhere over the rainbow. All these beautiful melodies. A lot of modern melodies are a lot of repeated, you know. You know, it's a lot of repeated notes and a lot of use of rhythm in order to kind of get, get the melody. And I think it has to do with being in the pocket. I think it's the influence maybe of rap music and hip hop from back in the day has kind of added more rhythm to melody lines than previously. You know, before it was these just flowing lines and it was about the chords underneath. Now it's more, simplified, I guess. But that doesn't mean you can't look to those old melodies for inspiration too. But yeah, repeating phrases, oftentimes a melody will have a motif, like a small idea, musical idea, whether it's rhythmic or melodic, and develop that, Right? So that's the idea. So that's number 4. Try to copy vocalists, not guitarists. All right. This is similar to the first one in a way. Practice genre switching. But within each one jam track, every 30 seconds, intentionally change your feel. Not so much the genre, but the feel. So like for 30 seconds, you'd be aggressive. And then for 30 seconds, you're laid back, right? And then for 30 seconds, you're funky. 30 seconds, you're lyrical. 30 seconds, you're sparse. You're leaving all sorts of room there, all right? So let me try that. I'll use this lo-fi one. I kind of dig this one. All right. How am I going to get aggressive over this? Let's see. I don't know what happened. The floor dropped out from underneath me there. But that was the idea. I wasn't calling out what I was doing, but I kind of was switching, aggressive and then more bluesy, which is almost similar. It's just in the attack. Then more melodic and lyrical, and then kind of sparse. And, listen back and you can put a label on each of the things I was kind of attempting to do. But yeah, that's a good idea. Just instead of like trying to do it like all within one phrase, just kind of say, all right, this section I'm going to be crazy aggressive, and this one I'm going to be sparse, and just have these cool contrasting sections. And that would be cool in a solo, actually, I mean, what song is it? There's a Hendrix tune. I remember reading about it. And there's like 3 solos in it. I forget which one in particular. But the writer that was discussing it and reviewing it, he was like talking about how Hendrix took a different approach to each of 3 solos. Same song, but like he didn't just do the same thing each time. One was maybe more chordal based, and then the other one was bluesy, and then the other one had a repeating melody or something like that. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember the idea that he was impressed with Hendrix's musicianship and musical sensibilities because he did that. And I always thought, that's cool. It's like, if I ever have the chance to have 3 solos in a song, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure I mix it up each time. But most of us just have 1 solo, if that, in a tune, right, to work with. So, breaking it into different sections like this might make sense. It might have a cool approach that you can take to it, All right, number 5, as it often is, I suppose, is, record yourself over unfamiliar genres, right? I'm a big fan of that. Recording yourself and reviewing it. I think that's a big deal. Because it's going to let you see, where your deficiencies are or where your strengths are. Trying to see if there's another cool track here. What do we got? I'll do two different tracks. See, it's a genre-based podcast, but I only jammed over 2 genres. So here's a rock one. Kind of Van Halen-y. Oh, this is an A minor. I don't know. We got ahead of Winnie by there. Oh, here are the chords. I don't know. That's the idea. So a lot of that was just blues, right? Some shreddy sort of stuff. I mean, you can really play most of the same stuff over anything. I'm trying to find like a reggae one or something. Ah, here we go. Oh, did I not? Wait.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just having fun jamming. Honestly, at this point, I just jam the same stuff over everything. Like, I just play what comes into my head, you know? I'm not thinking genre this or genre that. I'm just thinking like, oh, what would sound cool? Or what does that remind me of? Or, oh, I should play this. And then I play it and either I get it and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Or I play something else because my fingers didn't go where I thought they would. And then I go, well, what does that remind me of? Another genre, another song. It doesn't have to be reggae. It could be something from a film score or something from a video game or anything, you know, a bird call. You go, oh, that sounds cool. So yeah, that I feel like is the ultimate goal. I feel like I'm what is that? Something of many, master of none. I don't think I could play strictly country or I couldn't play strictly blues or I couldn't play strictly rock, but I think it's more of like an amalgamation of all of those things is what I can offer the world. That's what I have. And I'm okay with that. You know, like I like a mix of things. That's why I don't know if you guys heard of Blue Saraceno from back in the day. He was like that, man. He could play like blues and then he'd throw in a neoclassical lick and then he'd have country licks and it was just awesome. But he didn't really play like one style, you know, like one genre. And I always took inspiration from that. Nuno too, man. He mixes everything in, you know? So take that for what you will. But yeah, I have trouble just sticking to one style. So sorry about that. If my examples during this episode were less than genre specific, but I felt comfortable jamming over all the genres, and that's what I want for you, you know, to feel too. So, yeah. So I got to wrap up here. Say, playing melodically over any genre isn't about memorizing endless theory systems. It's about learning how to communicate musically using the tools that you already have, right? The scales, the licks, you know, all that stuff that you already know. Just try to like tweak it a little bit to fit the genre. And a lot of that's rhythm and a little bit of that is genre specific techniques. So, you know, a lot of players think they're stuck because they don't know enough. What they really haven't learned is to adapt what they already know. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What genre feels the hardest to you to improvise over right now? And what is your wheelhouse genre? I'd like to hear what that is too. If this episode helped simplify things for you, make sure to follow and subscribe and share it with other guitarists who might also feel stuck. That's the great way to support the podcast. So, all right. Well, until next time, this is Neil Santos with the Guitar Underground saying, keep on picking, and I wish you well. All right. Have a great week, everybody.